There's something about trucker stories that they always give us the chills. Maybe it is the silent night drive, the creepy woods, or the fact that we can totally imagine ourselves in that situation. In this video, I have compiled some really scary trucker and night drive stories from the internet. So sit back, relax, and make sure that you have subscribed to Mr. Scare. The most disturbing thing that's ever happened to me was on a long drive back to college, for my last semester before graduation. I am a night person and was leaving kind of late for the drive, but was expecting to get in around midnight. Being that I would be living on my own after school, I was feeling a bit sentimental, as it felt like I was leaving home for the last time. My home was somewhere else now. So it's sunset as I'm driving towards the highway, and there's a beautiful low fog in the fields along the road catching the light. I decided around then that it'd be nice to try for a more scenic backroads route than the typical turnpike stuff, so I decided to cut off towards West Virginia. I stop at a diner, get gas, then proceed towards the West Virginia line as night falls. This is the last human contact I make for the rest of the drive. I didn't foresee it, but an immense, dense fog dropped over Appalachia that night, slowing my drive considerably. At some points in the mountains there was scarcely 10 or 15 feet visibility. But there are some small towns the road leads me through. It's Friday night though, and it begins to feel oddly dead in each town I pass through. It'd be 9 or 10 p.m. and the local bars would look closed. There were no lights on in any of the houses. I felt uneasy, but maybe that's just how it is there. Anyway, I'm making terribly slow progress with the fog and the back roads at night, ear sightings keeping my foot a little light when the fog wasn't too bad. But at some points I'd have to nose my way through foggy intersections, unsure if I'd find the other side. It was almost impassable dense at times, and the trip would take double the estimated time to arrive because of it. I'm often driving around 25 miles per hour or worse, trying to be safe, and it's around 1 or 2 a.m. and there is no cell phone service as I get into a large national forest. There's no other traffic around, there has been little all night, so I decide to pull over to pee, leaving the engine on for whatever reason. It'd be a quick stop. I'm not fearless by any means, but I try to not let myself get too jumpy in the woods at night. But as I'm coming around the car undoing my belt, I hear voices maybe 40 or 50 yards into the forest, and then they're scrambling through the dead leaves and brush coming in my direction. It's pitch black night, no streetlights or houses, national forest, cloudy, foggy, starless/moonless night, and I can't see anything off the road beyond the red glow of the tail lights. Feeling sufficiently freaked out and not willing to find out more, I bolt back to the driver's side and floor it up the next hill, happy I had left the car on anyway. My heart is pounding. I never find out more about this little scare, and I'm glad for that. A little while longer and I'm heading up some steep mountains, and nearing an old fire watchtower from the World War II days. There's a plaque about it being a community morale builder, to have built even if it didn't affect the war in any way. I pulled into the overlook to actually pee because I never got the chance earlier. Now that I'm atop a sizable mountain, I suddenly get cell service and a string of concerned texts from my mom, freaking out and asking if I made it okay. By this time I should have been at my house hours ago, but I took a long and unfamiliar way in the dark and intense mist. Knowing that she won't go to sleep until I'm there, I respond that I'm safely home, hoping that we'll end it. She immediately calls me and asks where I am, and I can't really ignore her call, having just texted her. I tell her I'm home and she asks, "In Virginia?" And I say yeah, in my college town, despite being at the top of a mountain in a national forest in West Virginia. She sounds deeply unsettled and says she's been trying to call me repeatedly while I had no service. I ask why, and she says she got a really weird phone call from West Virginia, but way west of where you should have been, which is where I actually was. She said she got this phone call and a gruff young man with a backwoods-sounding voice was telling her he needed to speak to me. He took my name and started swearing at her and saying all these nasty things. She said she heard people in the background screaming and people laughing. She hung up and called me a few times, but it went straight to voicemail. She typed the number in Google and saw it was from WV and knew I was at least passing through a small part of it and called the number back. A small child answered and swore at her. Then the earlier voice ripped the phone back and started saying my name again and saying that he needed to speak to me. This is especially strange because I was driving my dad's car and I'm not registered to it, so even if they saw my plates and could run them, they'd get his name. I think I even paid with cash at the diner and gas station way back near the start of the drive 5+ hours earlier and in another state. I can't think of anything I could have dropped with my name on it when I had stepped out of the car briefly earlier during the recent incident. I still had all my cards and my ID. It would be an incredibly strange coincidence or extremely elaborate scare prank either way. I do my best to reassure my mom I have no idea what that could be about and that it must be a weird coincidence. I tell her I'm at my house and I'm okay, despite how troubling I find all this in reality. She gives me a half-hearted okay and we say goodnight. I pull out of the watchtower, pull off and continue on into Virginia. Never have I been so comforted by the 3 a.m. dregs of late-night parties, students stumbling home at a nearby university town off a highway I know well from my usual route. I carry on to that highway and make it safely, and things have been completely normal since, but I have never brought it up with my mom again, nor have I ever had the heart to tell her where I was driving that night, or how late, or of the voices in the woods. There's no climax and no resolution. I'm just trying to forget. A good friend of mine told me this story years ago. He is the stereotypical old big bad trucker. I've seen some weird stuff with him while driving in South Texas along the border. He never batted an eye, but while telling me this story he had goosebumps and a concerned expression, which from this guy is about the equivalent of a trembling lip and shit-stained pants. I'll tell this story in the first person as he told it to me. Years ago in the late 90s I was on my way from the house in Central Texas, heading to Laredo to pick up a load. It was early morning, around 4 or 5. I had just come off a string of days at home, so I know I wasn't tired. I am on one of those 2-lane winding roads in the absolute middle of bumfuck nowhere, when I see something on the side of the road at the edge of my high beams. At first I just thought it was roadkill, as is usually the case. As I get closer, I see that it is roadkill, and there's someone crouching over the deer carcass. I remember thinking either this guy is taking the antlers as a trophy, or he's fucking sick. As I got closer still, I can now see that this guy is eating the fucking deer. He's pulling chunks of meat from the stomach and bringing them up to his face. At this point he stops mid-motion and looks up at me. Not at my truck, but at me. He stands up and that's when I see that it is fucking huge, brown, and covered in hair. I remember thinking at this point, oh fuck. This thing is standing on the tiny shoulder looking at me. By this point maybe 3 seconds have passed and I'm about to the point in the road he's standing at. I didn't even think of stopping. In fact, I'm starting to lay on it and get the hell out of there. As I'm passing it, it's looking at me again, not at the truck. It's looking through the driver's side windshield at me. He obviously has the intelligence to know that there's a driver in here and knows where I'm sitting. As I start to pass him I can still see its head above the hood of an old needle nose Pete, which is an old truck design where the hood goes straight out from the windshield and is known for being tall and difficult to see around. This thing is fucking giant. I remember seeing what looked like human intelligence in its eyes. It scares the shit out of me. Was it Bigfoot? Eating a deer on the side of the road? What is your guess? Tell me in the comments. I was once driving late at night from San Antonio to Houston down I-10, probably about midnight. Along this road there is an access road that runs mostly parallel to the interstate, and veers off at an overpass every now and then. When the road veers off, the overpass, which is usually tall enough to let the tractor trailers through, has a pretty steep incline of dirt and concrete forming the hill. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm driving down the road sort of caravanning with my friend, except he was about 10 miles back because he stopped at Book-Ease to get gas, so he was far behind me. I notice there is a car driving at the same speed as me on the access road, veering off at every overpass until I can't see him anymore, and then speeding back up and driving alongside me again and again. At first, I am sort of worried because I think it's a cop. I had a gram with me but hadn't gotten a chance to smoke yet. At one point, the car once again veered off and then back parallel with me until he just took off, going well over 100 miles per hour, I'm sure, because I was already going around 75 to 80 miles per hour. An overpass was coming and I expected him to veer off again, except he didn't. He just drove straight on and ramped off the overpass, catching what looked like 15 to 20 feet of air, not to mention the height of the overpass already. I was still behind him, so I lost sight of him on the other side because I hadn't passed under the overpass yet. But when I did pass under, I didn't see anything. Nothing at all. No wreckage, no fire, no trees, bushes, ditches, nothing. It was like it hadn't happened. I pulled off and turned around and looked around the area and I couldn't find any evidence. Weirdest thing I ever saw. But the weirder part is my friend told me he saw the same car doing the same thing when he got to that stretch of the road, only he never saw the car commit suicide like I did. Mid-90s I went on a road trip with my son and for some stupid reason decided to take a different route home than the one I had taken previously and was familiar with. Turned out the new route was a super desolate road. I specifically chose to drive in the middle of the night so my son would be sleeping and there'd be less traffic. It's probably 3 a.m. and of course my POS car breaks down. By some luck of the draw I'm almost right in front of an abandoned roadside market and was able to coast into the parking lot. The windows are all boarded up on the market, steam is pouring out from under my hood, and it was essentially the start to every single dumb chick breaks down in the middle of nowhere and gets hacked to death movie you've ever seen. All of a sudden I see headlights coming around the bend. I'd been driving on this road for a couple hours and had seen maybe 2 other vehicles the whole time. A truck drives past, slows down, then I see the reverse lights come on in my rear view mirror. Deliverance banjo music starts to play in my head. The truck pulls up so our vehicles are driver window to driver window and I see the driver is an older man. And he's just staring at me. He looks like the stereotypical serial killer you visualize, long, scraggly gray hair, grizzled stubble, sorta crazy eyes. He motions for me to roll down my window. I'm just trying to look anywhere but directly at him and acting like I don't see him and everything's fine and dandy. Oh no, I'm not in any distress. Please ignore the steam coming from my car. I'm good, thanks anyway. He backs up a little, parks and gets out of his truck and starts walking towards my car. I'm thinking this is where my son and I end up, a news story about bodies being found in the boonies when the snow melts, and he starts yelling, "I'm not going to hurt you. Roll down your window." I keep looking anywhere but at him while trying to give off strong, "You don't want to fuck with me" vibes. In reality I'm about shitting my pants. He gives me a disgusted look, walks to his truck and starts digging around. He comes walking back with tools in his hands and now I'm thinking, OMG, he's got tools, he's gonna kill me and bust out my teeth and cut my fingers off so I can't be identified. He yells, "Open the hood." I'm looking everywhere but at him. "Open the hood. Let me see what's wrong." He's pissed. I'm scared shitless. But I reach down and pop the hood. He opens it and I crouch down so I can see him through the couple of inches where the hood is open. He looks up and we make eye contact and I am about to die. He looks down and keeps doing whatever he's doing. He goes back and forth between his truck and my car a couple more times, bringing more tools, some jug of something and other things I can't make out. After about 15 minutes he closes my hood and yells at me to start it up. My car sputters a little, turns over, and then seems fine. He yells, "Be careful. There are lots of weirdos out here." Gets in his truck, gives me one last disgusted look and drives off. My car made it home. My dad looked it over after I told him the story and deducted the guy had changed a radiator hose. My dad pointed out many times that the chances of me being struck by lightning were probably better than my chances of some random guy in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night happened to be driving around with a radiator hose and the tools to replace it for whatever 10-plus-year-old foreign car I'd been driving was. Basically, my car broke down on a dark, scary road, and instead of killing me, the serial killer-looking stranger who pulled over seemingly out of nowhere at 3 a.m. fixed my car. Last winter I worked as a night route driver for a medical courier service. Basically, I drive way out to rural clinics, pick up biological samples from the drop box, and then drive them back into town and ship them to a lab via the 24-hour Kinkos. My route was the same 4 nights a week, but on Thursday, the 5th night of my work week, I had one additional stop, a vet's office out in the middle of fucking nowhere. It added about an hour onto my run because of how far out it was. I seriously don't know how they stayed in business because I only passed like 2 houses on the way there. Anyway, it's around 1 a.m. and I'm heading out to my last stop, the vet's office out in BFE. I get there, park, leave my car running as always, go around to the side of the building, collect the sample, head back to the car, and freeze as I see something rifling through the front seats through the open driver's side window. I think I'm being robbed in the middle of nowhere, my phone is in the cup holder, and I'm about to shit my pants when this thing stops, looks over at me, and then hauls ass back into the woods at the side of the driveway. It had to have been a bear, but it ran on 2 feet. I know bears can walk bipedally, so I'm sure that's what it was, but some little part of me thinks I saw something else. After that, I always drove my car right up to the drop box, so I didn't even have to get out when I made that pickup. Fuck that. Not a truck driver, but I've crossed the states many times in my career. I used to tour manage a band that consisted of 4 musicians and 2 crew, so it was a total of 7 of us. We would often drive a white Sprinter van with a U-Haul trailer on the back, and if you're familiar with U-Haul, you know they have different pictures on the sides of them, often a state and something significant from that state painted on the side. We were about an hour outside of Roswell, New Mexico at 2 a.m. It was in the summer. We were coming from having just played the New Mexico State Fair. In every direction around us it was pitch black, no lights from cities or even rest stops, no other cars, nothing. We have absolutely no phone signal. All of our phones say no signal at the same time. It's a 2-lane highway, the only illumination coming from our headlights. We haven't seen another car for a very long time. Suddenly on the horizon we see a light appear directly ahead of us. We keep driving normally, and the light is approaching us quickly. We, rightly, just assume it's another car coming our way on the other side of the highway, but then as the vehicle goes to pass us, it's a white Sprinter van towing a U-Haul trailer with the exact same state artwork as ours on the side. Same tires. Same model van. Same trailer. Same everything. And as soon as we pass it, it's gone. All of us very uncomfortably said the same thing at the same time. Did that van have the same? What are the chances? I'll never forget it. We couldn't do anything but just uncomfortably acknowledge we all saw the same thing and none of us were losing our minds. Okay, so here is a spook for you, and to this day I still have no idea what the fuck. So I was in the VA/MD area, and had a lot of work-related sites ranging from downtown Baltimore to Virginia Beach and all around. Friday wrapped up, and I hit the road to some social arrangements I had made for the weekend. Spent the weekend with friends out in various parts of Virginia, got dragged off to other places even further out, the usual weekend fun times. It's late Sunday night when I have to leave, or I'm not going to be able to get home in time to start my, thankfully late afternoon, Monday. I'm fully rested, I didn't do any drinking, I'm not into drugs. On the highway at about 3 a.m., in the middle of bumfuck nowhere between Roanoke and DC. Absolutely nobody was around. I'm cruising along in the left lane simply because nobody else is around. No headlights for the past hour, no taillights either. No road lamps either. It's dark, mildly damp and foggy. I have the music up, I'm feeling good, all is fine. And then I just happen to look to the left and there is a fucking dog barking at me. A German Shepherd, in a car passenger seat, somewhat blue glow from the instruments inside the car, and it's got its face to its window, and it's barking its head off at me. I get a good hard look at it too, because at first my brain is not registering cop car, dummy. I'm doing 90 plus in a 75, I promptly have the oh shit moment when the dog, the instruments, the white Crown Vic / light bar all click in my brain after a second hard look. I put my foot on the brakes and start slowing down hard but safe, to pull over. I even put my blinker on to start shifting lanes over to the right to pull over because... Wait, there is no shoulder on the left side of this road. I look back to my left, where there is still no shoulder / room for another car, and it's just gone. No trace. I slammed my brakes and stopped in the middle of the fucking highway, flipped on all my light bars and even looked around with my handheld spot. There was nothing. No tail lights, no headlights, no engine sounds, nothing. There are no other tire marks in the damp but mine, and I can see for a nice long distance both ways, too. Nothing. My vehicle had great visibility, and a lot of extra lighting. Off-road SUV with the trimmings, there is no possible way somebody pulled a sneaky, let alone drove that fast on wet sloped grass and rocks on my left side. So, yep, there you have it. Ghost Cop and his dog didn't like me speeding, apparently. These were the stories for today. If you enjoyed listening to these stories, subscribe to Mr. Scare. Comment down below your favorite topics for more videos. Also comment your scary experiences.